let's talk about the transmission that I selected and why I selected it. This is the Aisin AR5 transmission. You'll find it in a number of vehicles, surprisingly American-made vehicles. You're going to find it in the Pontiac Solstice, the Saturn Sky, the Colorado, the H3, the Canyon, and the Polaris Slingshot. What a strange mix of vehicles that this transmission went into, but it's made by Toyota. It can hold a lot of power, and it's extremely smooth. I know what you're thinking. Why aren't you putting in the CD9 transmission, the 6-speed out of the Nissan? I did consider it, and I did put it on paper, and I was going to go down that road, and I realized it's going to cost me about $1,500 to $2,000 more in total, including the parts that you need to do that transmission over this one. Now don't get me wrong, I respect the CD9 transmission. It's a strong transmission, it's a 6-speed, it's kind of glamorous because you're making a 6-speed out of a 5-speed automatic, right? So you've got the 5-speed automatic installed in your car right now, and you're going to a 6-speed manual. That's pretty cool. Now before you start hating on the AR5 transmission, know that it's a derivative of the R154 transmission, and there are documented cases of this transmission holding over 700 horsepower and not breaking. Now that's not why I'm putting it in the car, but it is strong. Its ratios are great, perfectly matched for the GS400, especially with my 3.77 Aristo twin turbo differential. Now because this is a planning episode, I'd like to walk you through the spreadsheet that I used to get all of the parts in order, and it also has the cost on it. All right guys, I'm gonna go down this list. I'm gonna tell you the item, what type of item it is, generally where I got it from, and how much the retail cost will be, and that's just an estimate, okay? I will try to hyperlink everything I can in the video description. Okay, so let's go through and look at some of the parts that have already arrived. Now keep in mind, there are a few that are on their way or I have not ordered yet, which were on the list that you just looked at. But I'm going to go through the majority of the parts, what they look like, and what their purpose is. This is the Granas Racing Mark IV Supra pedal assembly. And the nice thing about this is you can stow it out of the way. So you can just push it forward like that. And then what we're going to do later is we're going to cut off this part right here so it doesn't get in the way of the clutch action. And that's the Land Cruiser 3/4 bore clutch master cylinder installed already. But that's what it looks like, and that's where it goes. This is your trans adapter that you're going to need by XAT Racing. It is a very nice machined billet aluminum piece, and it will go between your bell housing and your transmission. And some of you might recognize this. This is a flywheel. This happens to be the lightened 11-pounder from XAT Racing. And this will really help the 1UZ to rev up. It's going to be awesome. You got to be pretty good at driving a manual though. So keep that in mind. Driving a manual is a little more difficult with a lightened flywheel. This has a bunch of miscellaneous parts. This is from XAT Racing also. It comes with your kit. These are the 4AN lines. One is the 48-inch feed line. This one, 48-inch right here. So that will go to the clutch master cylinder, or from the clutch master cylinder to the throw-up bearing. And then this is the bleed line right here. It's a nice little bag of vacuum sealed parts that you're gonna need. I really like this setup. It's got some other stuff in here, and pretty cool. XAT Racing, well done. Throw-up bearing, concentric style. This will go on the transmission input shaft. This is a pack of 8 ARP bolts, and it comes with the XAT Racing kit if you make the selection. This is going to be a hard one to see, but this is basically called a clevis extension. And what you need this for is if you're going with the Supra Mark IV clutch pedal, when you install the clutch master cylinder into the firewall, it's not going to reach the Supra pedal. so you need to actually make an extension for it or buy an extension for it. This was sent to me, so I don't have a link for this, but just keep in mind, if you go with the Supra Mark IV clutch pedal assembly and the Land Cruiser Clutchmaster cylinder, you're going to have an extension so that they can reach each other. And I'll show you that in my installation video for the clutch pedal. This is the Stage 2 XAT Racing clutch kit. It should hold up to 415 foot-pounds of torque. I'm not going to be pushing that amount of torque, but it's good to know what it can hold. It does come with a clutch alignment tool. This is a Solstice Drive Shaft, and let me show you why you're going to need it. If you want to run a two-piece drive shaft assembly on your car with a transmission swap, which I recommend to avoid vibration, you're going to need this CV type end. And basically what you're going to want to do is have a drive shaft shop cut it and get it welded on to your existing drive shaft assembly. When this plugs into the output side of the transmission, that's why, if you can, you're going to want to get these special bolts and washers that hold this to the transmission. So really, all you're going to need from this is from here forward probably. And again, be sure to get these. This is the rear trans mount so that you can mount this transmission to the GS platform. It's going to sit in there, I think, like this. And those two bolts from the transmission are going to go through there, and then you're going to fasten it from here. This bolts into the existing chassis locations on the GS. I painted mine the same color as my car. I just happen to have some paint laying around. It comes unfinished, and it'll fit on the bottom right there. Nice piece. This is an 09 to 2013 Infiniti G37 Boot, and I think everybody knows what this does. Your shifter will come up through here, and this will seal the inside of your car from your trans tunnel. This is from my friends in Australia at CubeSpeed. Basically your shifter arm assembly. This is just a beautiful piece. Look at this. We're going to be getting rid of this here, but when we get rid of this and put on the extension, this will bolt into that extension approximately that way. And then you have the shift lever itself, which of course will fasten like that, and hopefully that will place everything in the perfect location inside the vehicle. This also came with a shift knob. It may not be your style, but they do offer different colors and different styles. So this one just I figured that red kind of matched my car a little bit. They got hardware in this box here. So everything you need. It's a real nice looking part there. It actually goes that way. So hopefully you can see that. We've got some cool stickers in here. CubeSpeed sticker in here as well, right there. So big thanks to these folks down in Australia for helping me out with this manual swap. Really appreciate the good service and the fast shipping. This is the extended housing, 4.75 inch by Drift Motion. And this will install here while the transmission is off the vehicle. So it will go there. I want you to see what this part looks like. It's got a Viton seal on the bottom. And it comes with this extension here. And this will go inside here. And your shift lever will go down inside of there. And the whole thing will mount up right there. And you can see how that changes the shifter position. This is called the tripod assembly. And this whole thing is going to get removed. We have transmission fluid here, MT90 by Redline. Right here we have Seal Packing 103. You can get this at your Toyota dealership. That is going to be used around this, which is a rear main seal. So we're going to change that out because we're going to pull the transmission off. Obviously, that's the time to do it. This here, it's going to be hard to see, But this is an oil galley gasket and it goes above the rear main seal. I don't know exactly how it sits in there, but kind of like this. It's pretty cheap. Might as well replace it while you're in there. So you're gonna need those things. Also, this is the ASIN 1281B form in place gasket for Japanese transmissions. And anytime you break a seal on this transmission, when you're working on it, you're gonna wanna reseal it with the best stuff. This is the best stuff. I know there's stuff like Permatex out there and some other things, but I just wanna make sure that I'm doing everything properly and I'm already spending a lot of money on this. I might as well just spend a few extra bucks and get the actual stuff for the actual transmission. This is a drain and fill gasket that I already had. The inner diameter is 18 millimeters. So you're gonna wanna find an 18 millimeter washer that will seal the drain and fill plugs on your AR5 transmission if that's the route you're gonna go. And the outer diameter looks like we are at 25 millimeters. And right here we have the cat outlet gaskets. They're pretty thick. That's what they look like. You connect your pipes back to your cat outlets, you're gonna wanna have new ones of these, especially how old these vehicles are. And this is the transmission jack. From Harbor Freight, 115 bucks out the door. It's gonna help me tremendously getting transmissions out and in. A few more items have arrived since I first filmed the other items. This is the Mustang synthetic leather shift boot. I chose the gray stitching. You can choose whatever you want. This is the 87 to 93 Mustang 5-speed bezel. By the way, this was $18 on eBay and this was $22. And again, I'll link everything. You also are gonna need to pick up a couple grommets because in the top of your A650 bell housing, you're gonna be running the bleed and feed lines and you're gonna wanna have some grommets there to protect from moisture and other things. So this was at Harbor Freight, this is $5. For the clutch master cylinder, recommend .4 and then of course brake cleaner for like the flywheel and stuff. Alrighty, that's it. Let's talk about some of the pros and cons of going to a manual transmission. By putting a manual transmission into your car and doing it correctly, you are going to add value and appeal to that vehicle. If you ever go to sell it, it's going to become a unicorn and people are not going to believe that you have a manual transmission, especially if you have a V8. Connection to your vehicle. When you drive a manual transmission, you are connected to your vehicle unlike any automatic transmission out there. Even the fastest paddle shifting transmission out there, you're still not as connected as moving that lever and going into the next gear. I've owned many manual transmission vehicles, and no matter what the power output was, I still feel much more connected to that vehicle than I ever have with an automatic transmission. Efficiency. Manual transmissions just are more efficient. The estimates are that the A650 transmission in my GS400 caused a drivetrain loss of approximately 18 to 19%. A 5-speed manual transmission is generally around the 15% range. An A650 transmission like I have has 10 quarts of automatic transmission fluid in it. This transmission has just under 3 quarts. Weight. This transmission weighs just over 100 pounds. Strength. The A650 is not known to be the strongest transmission out there. And when I installed my recent differential swap, I found out the hard way that that force multiplier actually tipped my transmission over the edge. I think it was already on its way out, and when I put the differential on, I think it just tipped it over. The 1 to 2 shift now is slipping at wide open throttle. Remember, this is a revised R154 transmission, okay? So if you go search through the Supra forums, you're gonna find people that run this transmission with pretty high horsepower and torque ratings. And finally, kind of a funny one, but I think it's a theft deterrent. Not that these GSs are getting stolen left and right out there, but you can just picture a modern day thief jumping into a vehicle and realizing that it has a manual transmission. And another benefit, not just for thieves, is if you don't want to loan your car out to people, you can say, hey, it's got a manual transmission, can you drive a manual? A lot of people are going to say no. And now let's talk about some of the cons of swapping in a manual transmission. You're going to lose cruise control. There might be ways around it, and I'm very interested in finding those ways around it, but at first, no cruise control. I use mine a lot, so it's going to be kind of a bummer to lose that. Vehicle skid control, or VSC. I actually like my vehicle skid control for cornering because on occasion on a slick road, it has saved me. It has stepped in and corrected me when I didn't even realize I was losing the rear end. So you're gonna have to pay more attention because you are gonna lose vehicle skid control. Cup holders, you're gonna lose the cup holders. I'll be putting some side cup holders on, which might be annoying for the passenger, but who cares about them? Traffic, driving a stick in traffic can be annoying. Stop and go traffic especially, and if you're gonna put a light and flywheel on, it's gonna be constant going and stopping, going and stopping. So just something to keep in mind if you drive in a lot of stop and go traffic or if you're in the city a lot. Inspection. Perhaps in your city or your state, there is a requirement that says that your transmission should match what it lists on the VIN number. So something to be careful with is if that's going to be a problem for you. Really, that's it for cons. I think that the pros far outweigh the cons, and I think that because I'm going forward with my swap. The biggest thing for me would be just the connection to the vehicle. I felt so distant with the A650 installed. It just felt so slushy and the shifts were slow. And I even had a valve body upgrade. It just got to the point where I couldn't stand it anymore and I want to go manual. So I hope this episode helped you to make a decision on whether or not you want to tackle this project. The project on paper seems pretty easy. When you start doing the research and you start planning, you'll realize that it's going to cost probably more than you anticipated, and your time commitment is going to be somewhere in the 50 to 80 hours range, depending on your ability and your tools and your garage, and if you have a spare car or not. All of those things. Next, we're going to dive into installation of certain parts. So episode 2 is going to cover installing some of these parts. I thank you for joining me. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Be sure to drop a like and a comment and hang with me through this series. I appreciate your support and I look forward to showing you how this manual transmission performs in my LEXUS GS400.